Thank you very much. Appreciate so many of you still being here for the second session. This has been a joy for me to put together because it is from interviews. This whole session is based on interviews from returned tent makers. I asked them, what would you have done differently? What would you do differently if you were now leaving after you have been over there? What do you want to tell the next tent makers on how to prepare, how to get ready? It is in some kind of an order. It's in order of how of importance. So we're going to look at the suggestions by tent makers to the next generation. Again, I refer you to tentmaking.org for some more resources. I added this one. This one was not by a tent maker. I had to add this one because we have come to realize that this is the publication that launches more tent makers than anything else that we do right now. We launched this publication only a few years ago, and as of today, it has been read in 92 countries. Continues to be read in 92 countries. It will only take 10 minutes of your day to read each issue. There's 3 articles usually, and you will always find an article that is of interest. So I firmly believe that we will continue to use this tool to launch many, many new tent makers. So the address is tentmaking.today. Number 2, practice devotions. We, as Christians, do this either well or casually or when we remember, depending on a person. There is no judgment here whatsoever. However, when you start asking God, are you calling me to go far away somewhere to share your good news to people? If you're thinking that way, you need to get a little bit more serious. The reason this is number 2 on the list of importance is once you are over there, most likely there is no place for you to continue meeting with other Christians or having somebody to have devotions with. So it becomes your personal thing. You do it. No one is going to watch over your shoulder. This is something that has to become part of who you are. This is what I do every day. So very often we hear of things that could have gone horribly wrong in these countries. And people get into the habit of whenever something unexpected happens, whether it's that 3 o'clock knock on the door, which can only mean bad news, the first thing you do is you call out to Jesus. This is probably the best advice I can also give you for today here. When something unexpected happens in your life, first go to Jesus. If you're sitting in a coffee shop and wallowing in your own thoughts, and you don't realize that there's a person beside you who is obviously in distress of some sort, and maybe fleetingly you think, should I reach out to that person? Let me give you a hint. If you've gone this far that you've thought this thought, you should do something. You should never leave it at, should I do something for this person? By that time, you're committed. Follow it through. Trust the Lord. But before you open your mouth, help me, Jesus. Help me. I don't know what's going to come out of this conversation. Help me before I open my mouth. Do you believe that's going to change things? I am not as courageous as they may sound when I'm in the West. I'm actually a real wimp when I'm in the politically correct West. When that business person sits next to me on an airplane, I am sweating through the whole flight. And how do I possibly reach out to this man who's going to call me in bad names by the time this is over? My worst response is, oh, up until now, I thought you were really smart. When they find out you're a believer. That is the absolute worst thing you can say to me. We've had a great conversation about stuff, and all of a sudden, they find out I'm a believer, and all of a sudden, they had me up there, and, oh, I thought you were smart. And I don't really know how to recover from that one except to hide in my corner and pretend I'm sleeping. But pray first sometimes makes all the difference in my life. Not always. It's not a sure thing, but obviously I feel better because I say, Jesus, help me now. I'm going to reach out to this man. So call for help when you're in trouble. I'll help you. Simple as that. And trouble comes in different formulas. Spend meaningful times in Scripture to feed yourself. We have a tendency to read the Bible so that we can learn greater insights into our Christian walk. Nothing wrong with that. However, when you're in charge of your own spiritual vitality in a country where there are no church bells ringing Sunday morning, it's a different thing. You are simply spending time in Scripture to feed yourself. Just keep reading. Don't stop to ponder the great wisdoms. You can do that. That's a different Bible study. This is about allowing the Word to soak you. Just keep reading. Allow the Word to do its thing. You will need to do this when faced by oppression from all sides. Become accountable to somebody. Share what's going on in your life, whether it's your spouse or your best friend or somebody at church. And find websites where you can download sermons, resources, and study aids. There was a time not too long ago when you could not do this from most closed countries. You simply could not get to these websites, nor if you did, the police were at your door wondering why are you visiting a church website. Today, in most countries that have internet, you're good. But the reason I want people to do this before they leave is to get into the habit of feeding yourself. And the good thing about this is it's on your clock. It is not you have to log in at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. You do this when it fits your schedule. So that part of your spiritual growth occurs from you deliberately going to visit a church or a sermon by somebody. I visit about 5 different churches depending on the day. On my time, and I often from my own church I download the sermons onto my phone, and then on these boring flights I think my maximum number of sermons in one flight is 7. I was overdosed on sermons by the time that flight was over. I told my pastor then, I says, do you have anyone in your church that listens to 7 of your sermons in a row? I says, there has to be a reward for that somehow. He was impressed. He says, I couldn't listen to one sermon of myself, so you're doing good. Form a prayer team. When people in your church start thinking missions and start sharing about their desire to do missions, the church generally gets excited. They're very happy. They want you to do this. And the wonderful people who come up to you will say, oh, that's wonderful. I'll pray for you. I would say in a good church, over half of the people will somehow, I'll be praying for you. Take it. Take every prayer ever offered on your behalf. Go with it. Be happy. But please do not confuse this as a prayer team. You know that there has to be a difference. Prayer team people are a totally different breed. First of all, you need to pray to find them. Because they need to be God sent to you. They are now part of your team. They are a vital part of your team. And when people come to you out of nowhere and say, God has told me to pray for you every day or to be on your prayer team, it is the greatest reward for any Christian worker, not just tent makers, any Christian worker. I was serving a church in Australia, a delightful time of my life, and every day in the church where my office was, temporary office was a older lady, retired lady, cleaning the church every day. Now, I do make a point of introducing myself to people like this, but I didn't really hang out with her because I was meeting with the pastors and the teams and doing work, so I was busy So I kind of didn't get to know her. I will not make that mistake again, by the way. I did learn. On the day that I'm leaving to the airport, the pastor's just in the car already, and he says, come on, let's go to the airport. I pick up my bag, and this cleaning lady puts her arm around my arm and walks me to the car. She doesn't look at me. She looks straight ahead, and she says, God has told me to pray for you every day. That is the sweetest gift I have received in over a decade. I went into the car with the pastor, wiping tears away, and the pastor says, why are you crying? And I told him, and he stopped the car. He said, she said that? He goes, yeah. She's never even said that to me. Do you know what a gift you have just received? This is the woman who prays in our church, and she will pray for you every day. So my prayer for her is, Lord, give her a really long life. I need her on my team. But do you see what's happening? This is not the person who nicely says, I'll pray for you. Take those prayers, but get a team of people. Share your vision with them. Communicate with them regularly so they know what's going on in your life. Invite them for a prayer breakfast, if at all possible. It's the only time that I actually get my local prayer team together when I pay for breakfast. In case they happen to see this video, how about one time you guys pay for the breakfast? Just throwing that out there. Anyway, it's still worth to do because you are meeting with the people who are the enablers of what you're about to do for God. Do not leave without a prayer team. Every now and then I get phone calls from the boarding gates. They're actually kind of fun. Thank you so much for helping me get this far. We're at the boarding gate. We're about to leave. Thank you for all your help, and you're being very kind and gracious. And my first question is, how many people are on your prayer team? And the answer I don't want to hear is, uh-oh. It happens. That one really worries me. You're about to go where the name of Jesus is not yet known. Not yet known. And you don't have a prayer support group. I call that taking a risk. So please form a prayer team. How many prayer members? If you can get 4, be very blessed and be very happy. The largest number I have heard was 12. But usually about 4 or 5 people very committed to doing it. I would say hit on your grandparents. They're probably going to be automatic. But not everybody has praying grandparents. Start bringing your faith to work now. Because you need to exercise your ability and you need to improve on how to do this. I guarantee you, more often than not, you will fall flat. You may even lose a friend or two, but the objective is not to lose friends, people. I always tell people, when you start sharing your faith at work, do it in a way that you don't lose friends. Because you still have to go to work the next day and the next day. So please do it in a way that respects them who they are. But do place yourself in position that you have to stretch the status quo. That you have to do something more than your friends just knowing that you go to church on Sunday. That's the baseline. You need to build on that a little bit more. It means more to you. When people interrupt your busy day and they know you're a believer, don't be surprised if they're actually trying to reach out to you. Actually, they're opening the door to hear more about your faith. Pray for your coworkers' situations. Be open and ready to pray for when they share what's going on in their life. I would guess that most of you have been at work and somebody sometimes have come and shared what is troubling them in their life. Unless you're the kind of person that nobody ever comes to, well, now you need to do some work here. But be the kind of person that people will actually approach and feel that you are the kind of person they can come to. I was working in a hospital many years ago in between coming back from Taiwan and going out again. And this was a hospital that was on the cutting edge of promoting abortions, including, so it was not a healthy atmosphere for a Christian to be in. I was actually asked to remove pro-life button from my uniform. So the atmosphere was not kind to Christians, and I really found myself challenged there. Until one day I was sitting with a whole bunch of nurses and doctors for lunch, and one nurse was just crying and crying about her daughter who had been ill a very long time, and the prognosis was that she's not going to make it. And she says, I'm only coming to work because it's too hard for me not to come to work because I need to get away. She's spending all her time with her daughter. And that really touched me because I had a daughter the same age. And I thought, how horrible if this was me. And what can I do now? And my first thing was to stand up boldly and say, I'm going to pray in Jesus' name for her to be healed. I didn't. That was me talking. That was not God talking. So when I got up from the table to walk down those long hallways of a hospital, I found myself walking next to her. And I just whispered in her ear, tonight, when I go pray with my daughters before they go to sleep, we will pray for your daughter. And she looked at me, I looked at her, and that was it. And yes, we did pray for her in our night with my kids. Some weeks later, her and I aren't working on the same shift again, and this was a night shift. And you know how you're supposed to be quiet in hospitals, especially the workers? She yells down the hall, yells my name really loud. And come over here. And I'm like, shh. And I go running to her, and as I'm running toward her, I'm thinking, she's going to tell me that her daughter died. Thank you for praying. That's my first, that this is going to go really bad, and how do I get out of this situation? This is the disbelief in me. And I go up to her and say, yes. She says, Ari, do you remember when you said that you would pray for my daughter with your daughters? I goes, yes. She says, did you? And I said, yes, we did. And we continued to pray for her. And the woman said one word, and that's the last word I ever heard from her because we never worked together again that night. She said, wow, and walked away. Now, what is it that you and I wanted to hear in this situation? Thank you for praying. My daughter is healed. She is well. She's going to be fine. I didn't get that story. That's what I wanted to hear. Well, of course, I go and ask people around, what happened to her daughter? Oh, she's going to be fine. But this was months later that I found out that the daughter was going to be fine. We don't know if God intervened. But what is the point here? To this woman who knew that her daughter had taken a turn for the better, that was not the more important one at this moment. It was the fact that a coworker stood beside her, whispered in her ear, I and my children will be praying for your daughter. That was the wow. I want to encourage you to hear wows from your coworkers and from your friends. Be a value-added worker. What does that look like? Clean the oily rag, as you heard already. There are always things that you can be doing at your workplaces that make you a value-added worker. Now, I want to caution you that this does not mean you become everybody's doormat and do the things that nobody else will do all the time. Let Sarah do it. She always picks up the dirt after everybody else. I'm not sure that it would be good for the kingdom to be seen as somebody's, let's just take advantage of her. But in the right times, do the things that no one else will do. I like to call it, do the coffee, make the coffee. Most workplaces, nobody wants to make the coffee. But I'm just using that as a metaphor for doing something special. Be a value-added worker because you are bringing glory to God. Number 5, connect with your pastor. Be submissive to your church's leadership. This is especially important for tent makers who can get up and leave without anyone. They can literally just hop on a plane, get a job and go on a plane, say bye-bye, and they're gone. It happens. However, your church is part of this work. Your church is your support team. Your church is your not your financial, but your spiritual lifeline. You want them on board. You want them to be a part of this. So in a submissive way, go tell them, I believe God is asking me to go to this nation to work and share my faith through my work. How is the church going to relate with that? How can the church be a part of this journey? Be in a submissive mode instead of an authoritarian. By the way, we're going overseas to work. We're going to make some disciples while we're out there, and see you later. We'll be back in a few years. You see the attitude difference? Allow the church to feel like they are your spiritual authority. I've heard this more than once from pastors, that tent makers tend to run roughshod over existing systems. And I don't want anybody that we work with to do that. Let them know of your vision. Tell the pastors and whoever's in the leadership team. Ask them to pray for you. I have yet to meet a pastor who did not pray for about to become tent maker. Inform them of the challenge. Don't assume that your pastor knows about unreached peoples or that there are countries where missionaries cannot enter. You need to inform him, bring him up to speed. I had one tent maker tell me that when he informed his pastor, the pastor says, well, why don't we just send a team and build a church there instead of you going there to work? And this was a very closed country. So he had a lot of work to do because the church was really getting on board with this mission, but to do it their way, let's go build a church there. So you need to inform them. Don't assume that they know as much as you do. And find a way to serve in your church. This is a tricky one because somebody once said that, so now that you need the church to be partnering with you, now you're willing to serve? Isn't that a little bit hypocritical? I'd like to say, no, it's not. Now you've realized that you desperately need this church. And right now, I'm willing to do whatever it takes so that this church knows who I am and knows what I am capable of as a servant. So I have heard from a number of pastors, I said, what is the job, the worst job in your church for a volunteer? I'd like to know what it is in your church. So I actually recommend future tent makers say, go to your pastor or your leadership team. Before I become a tent maker, it's going to take me 1 year before I leave. I want to serve the church in some way. Give me the job no one wants to do. Are you feeling challenged? You want to guess what that job is? Cleaning up after youth night, cleaning the bathrooms after youth night is apparently the low-run job. So if any one of you are doing that, Lord bless you. You're doing an awesome job. So there are a number of jobs. The other one was grade 6 Sunday school. I have a whole list of the worst jobs that pastors have a problem filling. So anyway, be a servant. Say, give me the worst job. I want to serve. Investigate mission agencies. They are there to help people become missionaries. So everything begins from your home and sending church. So from there you go to a mission agency. There are numbers, there's tons of them around. And all of them have different ways of dealing with missionaries. From your church, you can also go alone. Many people choose to do this, meaning that the church is the sender. There is no mission agency in the meeting. And then people join teams. There's a team going to work short-term for 6 months or longer, and they're looking for people to join the team. So those are the 3 channels. Mission agencies most likely will encourage you to be a part of their mission team that is already in the country. If you go alone, it is an incredible blessing from the Lord that all tent makers who go alone without anyone end up on a team that is already in the country. We call those in-country teams. They are a little bit safer because if on entry a security official asks you, do you know other people here? And your answer is, yes, I do. Well, who are they? Well, there are these people. And now the whole team is jeopardized because you've had to share this information. However, if you come alone, I don't know anyone yet, but I'm looking forward to making friends here. So the most obvious thing for a foreigner in their country is to make friends with other foreigners. It's the normal thing. So then that you find these other people who are like-minded is such a blessing for you because you've left feeling very alone and vulnerable. My favorite story of this one is a young lady from Belgium went into Asia, and I just saw on her Facebook that she's on the plane landing in Asia soon. So I sent a private message to her, and I said, as soon as you get this message, please contact this person who is also a tent maker there. This was not a really strict nation. Please contact them and they will help you. And my next message from her was, I just arrived. I met her at the airport. The tent maker was at the airport to take somebody who was leaving and saw this other girl coming off, and they ended up walking beside each other. Oh, so why have you come to this country? And 5 minutes later, they realized they are there for the same purpose. I just thought, how good is God? This was a very young girl. I felt a little bit concerned that she's going alone. And before she's out of the airport, she has found her team to be working with. I believe this is God's greatest blessing initially when people go to these places. Mission agencies will not send you alone. If you're a single person, single woman, it is highly unlikely that they would want to send you alone. The truth is that not everyone is married. The truth is that everybody doesn't have a spouse. Does that mean they shouldn't go? Absolutely not. Join a small group if you need experience, and if you're feeling very confident, start your own small group. I would recommend it that you reach out to a different culture group than you are yourself to get some of that cross-cultural experience, and I believe that we have them in all our cities. If you don't know people of another culture, perhaps you know people of another very different lifestyle. They also need somebody to reach out to them. So be brave. Take some steps of faith and start a small group. Alpha course, I highly recommend that you attend one. Kairos course and Perspectives. These are courses that are at the top of our suggestion list. And Tentmakers tell us that any one of these courses was instrumental in preparing them for small group work once they got overseas. Hospitality is one of the greatest keys of a tent maker's ministry. Therefore, you need to be intentional about it and not just whenever it seems to happen, that you're making time in your schedule to invite people to your home. As a matter of fact, in all countries but 2, you are allowed to bring people into Bible study in your home, but not outside of the home. It's still not, it may be legal to do, but the local police may read the law a little bit different. So it's still a little bit touchy in some countries, but most likely you're going to be okay in your home. Be creative so that people enjoy coming, and don't invite other believers. You don't want to jump on people who don't know the Lord. You want them to be on even level ground. And if there's something that stresses you out about having people in your home, you need to get rid of it. Patrick Lai, who wrote a book on tent making many years ago, simply puts it this way: if you struggle with hospitality, put it at the feet of the cross, at the foot of the cross. You cannot have ministry or bring people to Jesus without having them in your home in these countries. There's simply no other place where you can gather. In our courses, we spend a lot of time on teaching people about hospitality. And it is also the course session that brings us the most feedback that is not always pleasant. And I hate to pick on people here, but it's usually the wife. Or then the husband says, you really need to talk to my wife to get on board with this thing. I says, no, I'm not going to talk to your wife. You need to talk to your wife. But this is a stressful thing for many people in the West because we've kind of lost the open door policy. I'm staying overnight here in somebody's house. Thank you, by the way. And the guy, as he was giving me the keys, said, don't forget to lock the door. My first reaction, why would I lock the door? Where I live, we don't lock doors, but that is the truth. So we have become a society where locking ourselves in our home is the standard. I'm not saying you should unlock your doors. I'm just saying you should unlock your hearts so that people actually do want to come over and spend time with you. Ask yourself, do people actually come over without being invited? Do people feel comfortable? If you're that kind of person, you're doing well already. But a lot of people in the modern Western world are horrified if somebody shows up unannounced or is coming over. I remember when my really good friend got married. I really wish I could mention his name, but I can't. And I happened to be a flight attendant at that time, and my flight landed in his city, and I had 8 hours to kill. I'm going to pop over and say hi to my friend and see how he's doing now that he's married. And I showed up at the door. I had to rent a car to make this all happen, and I'm really excited to see my friend after 2 years, and knocking on the door, and his wife opens the door. And she goes, yes? I goes, hi, I'm here to see my friend. And I said the name. I says, and he says, do you have an appointment? She goes, he's my friend. I'm like, what is this, a TV show? And I see him sitting on the couch from the crack. And I go, hey, let's just call him John. Hey, John! And he looks up from the couch, a little bit uncomfortable. And then I figured, I've already rented a car. I've got time to kill. I says, hey, how you doing? I walked right in, and I have never been invited back to that house again, ever. The Lord bless them. Bless their hearts. That's not a problem. But if we become this way while hoping to reach out to the lost, we're going to have a problem. And I cannot stress it enough how important it is that we rediscover the joy of having people coming into our homes. And try to make your home a place that people enjoy staying at. Have you ever visited a home where everything is covered in plastic? Couches, chairs, everything has really thick piece of plastic on it. Have any of you? It's happened a few times to me in another country next to us. And I don't know what the protocol is when I walk into this house. Am I allowed to sit on this plastic or not? And it's like, I just don't know. And so I only bring this point up because you can Google it, plastic-covered furniture. There's hilarious pictures. Because it's not the plastic itself. It's what you're portraying to me. Hopefully, on a spiritual level, you don't have a plastic-covered life that you want to keep people separate from what you own. The other one is, have you ever gone into a house where the host beautifully, this happens to me every now and then, King George IV sat in this chair, and we got this from a French museum, and people are pointing to all these incredible things, and okay, I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to be sitting on King George's chair. So that thing has gone to the other extreme where everything is so beautiful and so grand that you immediately feel like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what the protocol is here. Like, am I allowed? You know what I'm talking about? It's just, there are different ways where we can make people feel uncomfortable in our home. Turning your TV on full blast. People invite me to their home and Fox News is blaring so loud that I can't converse. I don't really know what is my position here. Am I supposed to continue going, what? Or am I supposed to get up and turn the TV off? I'm pretty sure that's not the protocol. I'm making light of these things. We all do things that potentially could make people feel uncomfortable. I invited my neighbor over one time, just as we were getting ready to leave the condo. And she came and she stood in the middle, this dear old lady, she stood there in the middle of my living room and said, I don't know what to do in your home. I goes, why is that? Well, you have no furniture. And, well, we're a little bit of a minimalist couple. So we had minimal furniture. Basically, we were recently married and we didn't have a whole lot of money. But we did have places to sit down. And she left. She says, I'm uncomfortable here. And she left. But it wasn't even intentional. But then we started looking around our house, and we were really happy with our little home, and we kind of liked it. And now this lady said that it's uncomfortable because there's nothing here. So you know what I mean. But hospitality is such a central part of tent making, and the horror stories that we hear often include the fact that people exclude people from their homes for whatever reason. There's articles on that if you're interested. Prepare culturally. You will be going to a different culture. You will meet multitude of cultures. It's good to learn something about them before you go. History, culture, heroes, politics, jokes, etc. There was a time when my wife and I spent some time backpacking through Europe with our very small backpacks, and we went through the no longer existing Yugoslavia. I knew only one thing about Yugoslavia, that there was a former president named Tito. I just thought it was a cute name, so that's probably why I remembered it. We are going in the dark, and the train stops in the forest, and men with machine guns come on board, and they randomly choose 6 people, 6 men, including me, and drag us off the train. They walk us through a dark forest where we're stumbling because we can't see. They bring us into a barrack, and they line us up against the wall. And the men with guns line up on the other side of the wall. I'm like, how did things go south so quickly? Here I was sleeping with my wife on the train, and 5 minutes later, death squad. And as we're standing there, there's an Australian guy beside me. He starts weeping of fear. They're going to shoot us. They're going to shoot us. And I said, please don't say that. Don't give them any ideas. And then I said, didn't you check the wall? There are no bullet marks on the wall, so they're not going to shoot us right here. I'm whispering to the guy, and he goes, oh, thank you. This is really helpful. So we're standing there and standing. Nothing's happening. They're standing there with their guns and like waiting for orders. I don't know how long. It seemed like forever. But my thought is the train left. As soon as we got off it, the train left. My wife is alone there. She doesn't know, she won't even know what happened to me. Like, this is really going to be hard on her. I'm not thinking about my impending death and going to heaven. Not a really big challenge for me. But I'm thinking about my poor wife. We've only been married for 2 months. This is a horrible way for this to, these thoughts are going through my mind. I don't know, we probably stood there 20 minutes. More of the men started crying and begging for mercy. And I kept telling them, whispering this, come on, die like a man, die like a man. And behind the men on the wall is a picture. Huge black and white picture. I feel like I'm on the, what's that $1 million show? I'm going to take my last guess at who that is. And if it's the right one or wrong one, depends on what happens here. So I said, Tito? As a question mark. And the funniest thing happens, these men with the guns, they all turn around to look at the picture. Like, really? You didn't know that was there? And they go, yes, Tito. And I told everybody, let's do 3 rahs for Tito. And we all go, Tito, Tito, Tito. And of course, the men with the guns started doing the same thing, and they were doing Tito. And we had a Tito party for about 3 minutes, and then they led us through the forest really far where the train was waiting, and we got on the train. To this day, I don't know what the intention was. But the point that I make with this rather long story is that my little knowledge of their history probably saved us from something that was planned for us. So it's always good to know something. We have a university study that has been made. Can you imagine a university paying money for research on what kind of joke works in every culture? Have you ever heard of this study? You probably know it. You come from the same region. So this university paid people to go and do research to all these cultures for a number of years, and then they released a study, and they came up with a definitive university research paper, what kind of joke works in every culture? Anybody want to take a guess? I'll say it out loud so that people on video can see it. What kind of joke works in every culture? And you do know that if you get it wrong, it's not going to lead to any laughter. If you get the wrong kind of joke to the wrong kind of people, it may actually turn the tables against you. So you better get this one right. Mother-in-law jokes work in every culture. Now, bless their hearts, mother-in-laws. But this is a joke you can tell, and people will laugh with you. And when people laugh with you, they're more likely to listen to you. So instead of paying all those thousands of dollars for this research study, you now have that information. Mother-in-law jokes. Okay? Learn the basics of their language and religion. If you're somebody who loves languages, go ahead, learn the language, nothing wrong with it. It is my personal advice that allow the people you are serving to teach you their language, and more importantly, their dialect. For many, many years, agents of a certain country sent all their agents to be trained in Jordan, and they learned the Jordan dialect. 20 years later, a Tentmaker couple who had learned the language at that language school were serving in another totally different country. They were 20 years later accused of being spies from the dialect that they spoke. Because everyone knows that spies are trained in that country, and that is the dialect of spies. Isn't that amazing? For 16 years, they saw no fruit because they were always suspect of being spies. But they were highly educated, their teaching was required, and believe it or not, they are still in that war-torn country today. But you see how it can come back to you. So when you allow the local people to teach you their language, you're also empowering them. As a foreigner, when we go to their countries, whether they admit it or not, they like to put us on a pedestal in some way. Oh, you must be rich, you can come afford here, you must be an important person. So they put you on this false pedestal. When you allow them to teach you their language, not only are you becoming equals, they are rising above you as teacher. You want to honor them to do that. And there's nothing more delightful when the local people are telling you, oh, we are teaching him English. We're teaching you English. We're teaching our language to you. Thank you so much. Would you please come and teach us English, and we can have a swap. And it's all about language, getting to know each other's language. Do you know what happened here? Instant friendships. Instant trust. Just because you are wanting to learn their language and allowing them to teach you. And when you're going to a job contract, which has a deadline of 2 years on average, you don't have 6 years to learn the language. You have 2 years. So in that 2 years, you need to make friends quickly. You need to get part of the society and the community quickly. You don't have the delight of waiting 6 to 10 years until I fully understand this culture. So language and religion are two things I personally highly recommend. Allow them to teach you. What happens when you ask them, tell me about your religion? They will tell you. Of course they will. What do you think happens after they have told you about their religion? This is a no-brainer. They will ask you about yours. But you have earned to answer that question. You have earned the right to answer that question simply because first you asked them. It became a part of a conversation that leads to trust. Visit a mosque or a temple. Like I said, coming here today, I saw a mosque. I was quite surprised to see it here. As happy as Christians are when outsiders come to our churches, we praise the Lord. We're really excited, aren't we? Guess what? They're also excited when we go visit their places of worship. Doesn't mean you have to change your religion. It just changes. You're interested enough to get to know them as people and to understand what they believe. Reach out to a people group before leaving. Anytime you see people who are distinctly different from your culture, try to reach out to them in some manner. I had breakfast today at a local restaurant. I deliberately asked to go there with my friend, simply because I wanted to touch a people group that I am really fond of. And it allowed me to do that even for just a fleeting seconds. So find a people group that is distinctly different from yours, simply so that you are getting into the practice of interacting with people of different cultures. God made all these cultures. He delights in them. We should make our best to understand them and to know them. And if you're the kind of person that has friends from many cultures, I really want to bless you. And if you're not, I want to urge you to make sure that your friendship circles are not monochrome or just of one type. There's a tremendous richness in having friends in different cultures. Number 10, way down the line, people always have this nagging feeling that I will never find a job. How can I become a tent maker when I can't find a job in my own country? I'm having a problem finding a job anywhere. Why would I find a job somewhere halfway around the world? And until people buy into the idea that, yes, I will find a job, all our teaching is theory. No one really buys in until they believe that they will find a job. So my advice is that once you start researching the global job market on the internet, you dedicate blocks of time not dabbling it. When you dabble in it on your coffee break, you get frustrated. But when you do it deliberately for hours at a time, you will learn how it works and you will get better at it. This way you find out what the opportunities are in your field, where the jobs are, what they look like, and you need to update your resume early on and then submit it to these job opening places. Honestly, of everything I'm teaching you here today, finding a job is the easiest part. I speak from experience, having helped thousands of people go through this process. Most people are frustrated. It doesn't happen fast enough, but everyone has found a job. Can you believe that? Isn't that amazing? Why do these thousands of people, how is it possible that they all find a job? Are they all professors? No way. Many of them have very basic professions and skills. Here's my reason why I think everyone has found a job. God is in the picture. God hears the cries of these people who've never heard his name. He wants them to know his son. He loves them as much as he loves us. They don't have access. But here is a person in this city saying, Lord, if you want to use me this way, I want to go. And God is not going to say, no, I'm sorry, you don't qualify. Or God's not going to say, well, I'll give you that desire, but you're not going to find a job. That doesn't make any sense. That's not the God that I serve. The God who's putting that spark in your heart also has a job prepared for you. And I can tell you without fail, everyone has found a job. So I want people to remove this issue during the preparation process, because I don't want anyone to go until they have gone through the process of getting ready. The scariest people are the ones who come to a seminar just like this one. Believe it or not, it happens. On Monday morning, they go on the internet, they find a job. By Wednesday, they have been approved. By Thursday, they have a job contract. They email me in glee saying, oh, Ari, this is so exciting. I am going on next week. I'm leaving for this in this country. This is so amazing. Do you think it's amazing? What are you going to do now? How are you going to share your faith towards different culture? How did you prepare? How's your prayer team doing? Do you see all the components that get missed that are critical to the success of you as a tent maker as far as ministry is concerned? I fear for these people will leave too soon. God has time. He is never in a hurry. Take an English as a second language course. I know there are some in your city. Whether you're an English teacher or not, you should learn, you should get some kind of certificate, because most likely in some circumstance, you will be teaching English. It is the first thing that people see of value in you. When you from the West come into their community, the only value they initially see is, what can I get out of this person? Are they going to give me money? No. Hey, they speak English. They can teach me English. That is the most value initially that you are to the community. If you're an engineer, guess what? Your engineer friends will say, hey, can you stay after work and teach us some English? If you're a doctor, if you're a nurse, if you're whatever, teach us some English. I want to be better at this. So if you have even a small certificate that says that you're actually a qualified English teacher, it shows that you respect them. You have gone and taken this training simply because you knew this was going to happen, and I want to do it as good as I possibly can. It deals with people face to face. You never ever get such interaction with people except as an English teacher. You have this amazing connections to people. It leads to faith discussions. People will ask you about your faith. It's needed everywhere in the world right now. A study says that over 1 billion people are studying English as a second language. 1 billion. And they all need teachers. You know what? The number one reason why ESL schools shut down? They can't find teachers. We get requests for English teachers regularly. People coming to us, please send us English teachers. You probably will teach English somewhere, somehow. If you're a lady of the house and you stay home, you will be teaching the ladies in the neighborhood English in your kitchen, most likely. Upgrade your skills. As the process of getting out takes about a year, you have some chances to upgrade your skills. Most likely, you will be speaking in public somewhere. Most of the time, you'll be invited to some kind of event, and then, please, you are from country X, please tell us, this audience, where you're from. A young couple went to Libya, and on the third day, the man was invited to a governor's mansion to speak about what it's like to be a foreigner in Libya. If you don't like public speaking, take some lessons. Toastmasters is highly recommended. If you've never heard of Toastmasters, check it out. It was started by an evangelist. Did you know that? Toastmasters were started by an evangelist who wanted people to be better at presenting the gospel. Now, I need to put a cautionary note in there. Toastmasters groups are not all Christ-loving or God-honoring. So find the group where you fit the best. First time I went to Toastmasters, I was really excited. And they gave me the rules. You have 15 minutes to talk on anything you want. Come on, don't give me 15 minutes to talk about anything you want to a bunch of people who don't know Jesus. Like, there's only one track I have here. And I spoke about what it means to be a follower of Jesus in this society and in this country and in this city, and how exciting it is and how it impacts me and how it impacts, I just had this great 15-minute sermon to a totally unchurched crowd. I was in my zone. I thought, this is too good. I get to do this. They can't stop me. At the end, sorry, we forgot to tell you that the only one topic you cannot talk about is religion. But I had my shot. I never went back there again. But you know, it was exciting because for once in my Western world, I was able to talk about Jesus and nobody could stop me. So if you want to try that, go ahead. But Toastmasters is the most encouraging group of people I have ever met in my life, and they will make you a better speaker. Learn some basic language lessons as you prepare to go. If the very basic language is, and I highly recommend it, that you learn the words thank you and you're welcome, or hello or how are you, those three. I want to make that a challenge for the upcoming week. You know the people from other cultures that you have in this city. Learn, go up to them and say, I want to learn these three words in the language. Let them teach you. Watch what happens. They are excited that you are interested in that. And the number 2 rule to that is learn how to say it so perfectly that it blows their socks off. I mean, it's going to take you a few months. But then in the future, when you see people from that visible people group and you casually in the checkout line go, hello, how are you, in their language, watch their tongues drop out. I love doing that. I know this in about 10 different languages. My favorite one is, I lived in India for 6 months. Anybody have any Indian friends? Do you know what the Indian yes is? And it is a very, very slight. If you go there as a visitor, you'll do it extreme because you haven't figured out the beat yet. But when you've lived there, you actually get it down pat. And I see Indian people in the elevator, and they're speaking Hindi or whatever, and I just smile at them, and they realize I'm smiling at them. They look at me, and then I just go, oh, you speak fluent Hindi. How wonderful. I didn't say a word. I just shook my head in the right beat. I love doing that. My kids think it's hilarious because it always brings joy. I was in a restaurant with my dad, and the lady looked distressed, and she was obviously a Sikh. And when she came and brought the bill, I thanked her in the Sikh language. She started weeping. And I said, you have time to talk? She goes, yes. What? Well, tell me what's going on. And she said, I have been brought here against her will to marry somebody. And she misses her family back home and just told me her life story. And I said, can I bless you before we go? Yes, please. All because I knew how to say thank you in her language. Please, if you do nothing following this seminar, do this thing. And I think you know which people group I'm talking about, the one that is a majority in this city. Please reach out to them. They need to hear thank you in their language, or hello. Pursue your interest, hobby, sport, or activity. I doubt if this has been on many missions courses as a suggestion. The book that I really want to write is the stories of people who have brought their sport or hobby with them and have introduced it to local people, which has then brought people to Jesus, which has then started churches. I have dozens of those stories. And it all started because they brought the thing that they are passionate about, the thing they love to do, introduced it to the local people. They're wonderful stories. And I fully believe that God has given you an interest that you love to do. Hockey is a little tough in the Sahara, by the way, but you could improvise. But if there's a sport that you love or you have passion for, then when you're sharing that with somebody, you're about as excited as you will ever get. Right? If I were to ask each one of you to tell me, what is it that I know what you're into hunting. Man, if we started talking guns, we'd have a great time, right? And immediately we would reach a different level of friendship because we have that in common. You got to see my gun, So, that's true. We are being true to ourselves, who we are when we talk about our passion. That is it. That's the core who I am. Please don't ask me what I'm passionate about. We're never going home tonight. Because I love talking about the thing I'm passionate about. And into that conversation is very easy to bring your faith. Because you're also passionate about that. Eric Liddell, I hope you have all seen this movie, Chariots of Fire. Great movie. Eric Liddell, he won a gold medal in the 1924 Olympics. I believe that God made me for a purpose, but he also made me fast. And when I run, I feel his pleasure. What do you do in your everyday life that you're passionate about and you're good at? And as you're doing it, you can honestly say, I feel God's pleasure. I want you to feel God's pleasure in everyday life because you're doing something that you love. It could be knitting. It doesn't matter what it is. It has nothing to do with it. It's your go-to thing. I'm looking at that amazing grand piano over there. I have never seen a grand piano that big in my life. When I was brought into this church earlier today, I ran for that piano. And I just sat there, and I'm so glad that it was an empty church and I could sit there and play. I am totally awed by grand pianos. So this is one topic we could really talk about a long time. So anyway, when I play the piano alone, I feel God's pleasure. We have some books. The one, Work Abroad, Make Disciples, is coming out soon. It will be the definitive work for tent making today. It has 14 authors who are all the leaders of today's tent making movement, writing chapters in it. And Great Commission Companies and BAM Book are both for people interested in business as mission. Thomas Hale, who wrote the book Authentic Lives, the white one, is a course attendee. He came to our course because he wanted to write a book about what it's like to be an authentic tent maker, meaning that you are what you are, you don't hide anything. Spiritual Survival Handbook and Eternity in Their Hearts. How many people have read Eternity in Their Hearts? Come on, I want to see some hands here. Yeah, I should say it and guess, Anyway, it's a really great book. It's the book that also you will be challenged with. If you don't read it, you will be challenged by the content of this book. It's a very, very old book. It's probably in your church library. And last, I want to invite you, if any of this has made sense and you feel like this is something you'd like to look at, we have tent making courses around the world right now in 8 different countries. More are being added. And if you want to find out where the courses are, go to tentmaking.org, and there's an events page there. What's in the course? It's 4.5 days. It's over a weekend, so that way you're only taking 2 days off work. We try to make them over long weekends to reduce the amount of time people take off. 30 sessions, which equals about a 2-week college course, from 8 in the morning till about 10 at night. And we are trying to get the online course available as well. So what does this tent making course cover? You hear a lot of personal stories because every trainer is a former tent maker. You will hear their stories of what happened to them, and it's the good, the bad, and the not so good. We are painfully honest in our stories. You will probably hear more about failures than about victories, because that is the reality. It's a biblical concept. What are tent makers challenged with today? How do you work in sensitive areas? How to find that job finally, and cross-culturally, preparing cross-culturally. And then we have case studies, which are a really enjoyable part. People frequently tell us that they learned the most during the case studies because the whole course became relevant during those case studies. And we look at sending platforms, spiritual challenges and disciplines. We like to call it spiritual warfare, but in the politically correct evangelical West these days, that didn't sell very well to the professionals, so we had to remove the spiritual warfare. I'm distressed to tell you that, and we just call it spiritual challenges. I'm going to quickly tell you the best quote I have on that. Very few tent makers that we work with believe in spiritual warfare. All of them believe it by the time they return home. Did you get that? Few of them believe in spiritual warfare as they leave. All of them believe in it by the time they get home. Your faith at work, hospitality as a ministry, how to make disciples that make disciples. We don't make converts, we make disciples that continue to work. A Bible study in your home, house church planting, team dynamics, and how do you prepare to become a tent maker. So those are some of the topics and topic groups. Be encouraged. Every tent maker that we have ever worked with has gone through this preparation process. Remain submissive. God is at work. He's never going to run by your clock. He's going to run by his. From my perspective, the time of preparation and the length of it is God's gift to you. He still has some edges to work on with you. He has some things that he wants to final prep before he allows you to go. From the time that people say, I will go, it's about 8 to 12 months on average. So hold on, it's not going to happen overnight. And always remember, time is God's, not ours. Now, this is one of my favorite sayings that I frequently mention to those who are getting discouraged about how long it's taking them to get there. I always get them to say this one with me. God's delay never destroys his purpose. Isn't that wonderful? In even everyday life. If God has a purpose and a plan, his delay does not nullify the purpose. Connect with the Tentmaking organization. We are working feverishly to make this tentmaking.org the portal of all things tent making. It's a very simple, so we want to have the connections. There are some denominational organizations, tent making organizations, so if you're from a particular denomination, we want to list their tent making track. So we want to make sure that everybody feels that there is a channel and a group that will help them. And as we keep adding these tent making organizations around the world, we keep listing them. And at this time, due to this being a video, I'm not going to show any preferences. This is the last slide. Thank you for hanging in there so far. One more thing to go. Do you see the beautiful stars? I have a prayer for you before you leave. Please write it down that it's in Daniel 12:3, because if you don't, you're going to come back and say, where was that Bible verse? Because I've never heard that one. Daniel 12:3, one of my favorite ones. My prayer for you tonight, and thank you for coming, that you will live wisely and well, shining brilliantly like the cloudless, star-strewn night skies, and put others on the right path to life, and thus glow like stars forever.